I'm the Associate State Program Leader for Community and Rural Development. And we'll start with a really quick little history. If we want to go to the next slide. Um, Kind of why do we collect these indicators? Probably 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I came to PLN for the first time, and we were talking about these indicators. So the North Central region was collecting indicators, and the people at NIFA were finding it very useful um, to take these indicators and have them to present to people if they ever had questions about the impact of our programs. And we thought, well, that would be really cool if the Southern region were to contribute to this. And there was also lots of conversations going around about how do we articulate the value of what we do in community and rural development. And so we really wanted to be able to articulate that. And so these kind of serve dual purposes, both as something to hand out, but also to help us to articulate. And again, this is only one area of community development. As you see, we've expanded them a lot over the past, 15 years. And so we get into some things more than what we did originally. Originally, it was all economic development, kind of jobs created, that sort of thing. And now we've expanded more into leadership type of things. So let's go to the next slide. So these are a copy of kind of what we hand out. You'll notice these are the 2024 indicators. So in 2024, we collected for 2023, so they'll always be 1 year behind this year. 2025, we'll collect for 2024. And there's variations on how schools do this. NC State collects on a calendar year, so we will collect from January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. Some schools are off 6 months from that. And so long as you're consistent in what you report every year, so that you're reporting the following year, even though the time frame might be different, it doesn't matter. And then you'll see here there's a front page that has the indicators. And again, there is no indication of who is reported to these things. So we just report on what we can report on. So we don't know if I don't know if this says how many schools reported on, but all 29 schools reported under each of these numbers that's given here. There might be different schools that are reporting under different numbers, and that's okay. You just want to report what you have confident that you have numbers to present. And then the second page, and then if you, Roseanne, you want to change to the third and fourth pages, these are vignettes that each institution can present. And so they are just a little snapshot or success story about a specific program. And so this is just a chance for a university to do a little bit of storytelling about things it likes to do. These are limited to 75 words during COVID. We also did, I think there were 100-word vignettes, a specific handout just on COVID programs. But these are kind of like they could be anything that the university does. And I kind of cycle through our main community development programs we have in North Carolina every year. You want to switch? Thanks. So you have to decide as a state and institution how you're going to do this. For North Carolina, we collect data as a whole. North Carolina Cooperative Extension, I know Virginia does this too. I don't know about every one of your states. But our first page that gives our numbers are for the whole extension system in both institutions. But there's a chance for each institution to then present its own vignette. So we have one for NC State and NC State University, both usually. And so you can do that to highlight the things your institution is doing. Does anybody have questions about this part? Okay, great. Roseanne, I think it's you.
Yep. So the overview of the indicator collection. So you guys have probably seen emails from me. I start to send them out in January because some people report on a calendar year, and then closer to late spring, I will send out another reminder for those of us who are not on a calendar year reporting system. The email will include a how-to guide along with who you need to reach out to if you have additional questions, and the deadline. Our deadline stays consistently with July 15th. And the reporting that is due on that day is the numbers that you can contribute to for that year. You upload them into the Excel sheet, and then you email that to both myself and Carmen Kelly here at the Southern Rural Development Center. And again, like Susan said, the data is collected and reported annually to reflect 12 months. Again, we don't get into the weeds in regards to, are you a fiscal year, an annual year type of institution. We just want your 12 consecutive months, however your institution currently collects this information. And then we have the but-for principle applies. So what that means is extension doesn't have to be the project lead or the sole institution or instigating factor for the data set that you're deriving your information from, but you have to have played an essential role in achieving that indicator. So that's what the but-for principle applies. So if it wasn't for your office, your extension playing an essential role in it, those numbers would not have been collected without your support. But again, you don't have to be the lead or sole instigating factor in regards to that specific determinant. So again, complete that Excel template by July 15th, but also that is the deadline for the vignettes, which we'll discuss a little bit more later today.
Okay, so now we're going to go into the indicators. Again, I think there's about 25 of them, and only one of them is exactly the same as our past indicators. They all have minor little word changes, or there's some new ones. So this is the only one that's exactly the same. Number of participants reporting new leadership roles or opportunities. So this is focused on the role. So they are reporting getting to do something new or having some new leadership responsibilities. They're not limited to new formal leadership roles. It could also include expansion of their current responsibilities, leading new activities, or serving the community in a new way based on increased capacity due to extension training. So this is the but for that Roseanne was talking about. All of these things that we want to assess, these people, you need to have had some capacity building through extension for us to be able to count their outcome. Okay, so this one's a new for 2025. So we've added, that was the new leadership roles, and this is they're taking on the leadership role for the first time. So this is the person, this is looking at the number of people. The other one was number of people that have new roles. This is number of people that are taking on a new role. So number of individuals taking a leadership role in the community for the first time. So this is capturing people that have never had a leadership role and they're doing that for the first time. So we really wanted to capture like how is extension impacting people's ability to take on leadership in their lives. Number of new or deepened alliances or networks. So before we asked that they had a formal memorandum of agreement, and we've taken all that language out. So new or deepened alliances or networks formed at the community level. So again, this could be with an MOU or without an MOU. So we're just looking at the number of new partnerships, new collaborations, new networks that have been formed or strengthened. Again, as an outcome of extensions work. So this indicator is a lead. Previously, there was the number of plans at the community level. So now it's community or organizational level plans that have been developed. And again, so we separated out development of the plans, and the next indicator you'll see is the implementation of the plans. And so we were able to really capture more of the kind of life process of the work of developing plans, because a lot of people do strategic plan development in their communities, but not necessarily implementation, or that's just a whole different process that they do. And so we wanted to capture those separately because the work is very different. So this is the new community organizational plans developed. And here's where we capture them being implemented. So again, we separated out a previous indicator we have to two separate indicators. So this is the plans that you talk about in the previous indicator. And now we want to know if they're being implemented even fully, if not completely. So we would capture, sometimes the work on this goes for years and years. And so this gives us an opportunity to capture that work, even potentially multiple times if you have a multi-year project. The dollar value of grants or other resources assessed by communities or organizations. So previous, we had in-kind resources and we had grants and that sort of thing, and we combined all of that. So this is looking at the dollar values of grants or other resources. So this could be anything that was assessed by the community, accessed, I'm sorry, by the community organization as a result of extension's work. So this is not extension getting money. This is the community getting money to do its work. And so it could be the in-kind contribution, or it could be a grant that you helped them write, or that you did strategic planning so they could write, that sort of thing. So it's a kind of a combination of two previous indicators. Yes, Crystal, can I get a copy of the presentation slides? Totally. And this recording is going to be available on the SRDC website at some point in the future, probably be a few days. But you'll be able to go back and look at this whole presentation. So the number of hours contributed by community partners. So again, we wanted kind of the volunteer hours. This would be people, say you're working on a collaboration to do something, and Extension is convening this work. So you would be able to count the contribution of all the partners that are at the table, or if there's a project that they're implementing and there's volunteer hours. So you'd be able to track all of those things. So this is number of businesses or organizations. So again, we've combined businesses and organizations here, created, retained, or expanded. So we wanted to kind of capture all the things that we're creating. So Extension doesn't only work with communities to develop new business, but they also do a lot of organizational development. So we're capturing that in this indicator. So this is a new indicator for us. And I know particularly a lot of the 1890s are doing this work. And so we wanted to really give an opportunity to capture that. Some 1862s might do it, but it's not NC State, so can't speak to that. But number of businesses or organizations with increased access to financial resources. So if you do any kind of work with community members in how to access financial resources, loans, that sort of thing, community grants, you would capture all of those things here. And lastly, for me, number of jobs created, obtained, or retained. So you could create the job and capture that, or you could capture somebody getting that job or saving that job. So it's new jobs that have been created, individuals who obtained employment, so helping people get jobs. A lot of people do work and helping people access jobs and or get new training. I know, and Kenny, I'm going to call you out here in North Carolina. We're doing the remote worker program. And so helping people get jobs in rural places that they can access remotely, all of those things would count towards this indicator. Okay, great. I think I'll turn it over to Melissa.
Yes, thanks, Susan. So this next section really focuses on the program participant level, and each of these are new for this year. So this first one covers new or deepened connections, the number of program participants reporting new or deepened connections with people. So depending on your particular state, you might be measuring new connections that have occurred in your state or through as a result of your programs or efforts. Or you might be measuring deepened connections. You might be measuring both of those separately, but for the purposes at the regional level, this has been combined to one indicator to really highlight those new or deepened connections. So that's up to you at your individual institution to determine if you want to collect these indicators, how you want to define that. But those will be merged for this one so that we can really highlight both of those as a result of the programs that occur. Then the next one is this is the same concept, but related to community engagement. We know there's a lot of programs and they're so specific to each state and each institution on community engagement and increasing that engagement opportunity. So the number of program participants reporting new or deepened community engagement each time. And this helps us capture those who have just become more actively engaged in their community. That can be related to a new initiative, or it could just be increased participation as a result of that extension role. For this one, the number of participants indicating improved quality of life, again, it's up to each individual institution to define what that means. We don't have a definition of what quality of life really at the regional level, that's not defined, but we really rely on the individual institutions to come up with that. But this can be measuring how they report an improvement just in their overall quality of life as a result of our community development efforts. And this is prioritized, I know, in a lot of extension systems. So this is a good way to really highlight the way community development efforts specifically contribute to that quality of life experience for individuals and participants. This next one is highlighting the skill development training programs offered through Community Development Extension. We know so many of you are focused on workforce development, digital literacy, remote worker readiness, and we're seeing more and more trainings and certificate programs kind of being aligned through community economic development. So this helps us track the number of individuals that have participated in or completed the extension training program that's focused on building those skills. So we have just a few examples there because this one can feel kind of nebulous and it would be easy for us to try to understand what exactly is the skill development training program. And because one state has this one or another state has this one, they can all align at this indicator. So we're looking at digital skills, workforce development, facilitation skills, grant writing, leadership development workshops that you may lead or participate in. Any of those things can be relevant. And then for the total number of contact hours in programs offered through Community Development Extension. This is a new one this year that I remember being discussed a lot about, just tracking those contact hours specifically and highlighting those. So we know several of you prioritize those contact hours, and this is a way we can communicate that at the regional level. This could be focused across technical assistant, that one-on-one business development support. Any of those contact hours that your institution provides can be captured right here. And I think now I turn it over to Stacy.
Hey. So one of the things that you guys might notice is there's a diverse range of indicators that are in this, and that's because all of our institutions have diverse programs. And so in some states, natural resources is part of the community development work that's happening. So we want to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to have something that they can report through this process. So this indicator is, again, another new one, and it is looking to measure the number of communities, organizations, could be individuals, and others that have established new or enhanced practices to conserve and protect natural resources. And obviously, these would be initiatives that have been facilitated by Extension. So if you're doing water quality work as part of your Extension community development programming or conservation or any of those types of things, that would fall within this. Maybe we used to have an urban agent that focused on like Tree City USA and programs like that. That's where those types of activities would fall into this category. The next one. And then this next category is, this is again, one of those medium-term outcomes of people that are applying skills or tools that they've learned how to use through extension programming. So this is not one that we have in my state. Like we've not developed any applied decision-making tools or support decision-making tools, but I know there are states that have done that. They've got apps, maybe they have specialty crop production type things that they've created for small farmers to utilize that as part of their overall community development program. So basically anything that you've developed that can help the clientele that you're serving make decisions that are data driven or using technology to help facilitate those decisions. Those are the types of things that you would put in this category. And then the next three indicators are more internal extension capacity indicators. But again, for a lot of institutions, these are really important to demonstrate to extension directors, to demonstrate to NIFA how we're building capacity within our organization to deliver the programming that we offer. And so the dollar value of grants or other types of resources, in-kind contributions to your programs, those are things that most of us are measuring, but we haven't always collected and reported as part of our community development indicators. So that's what we're wanting to do this time around. And that's not just things that maybe you utilize or you've gathered, but if you've got extension agents out there in the field that have garnered resources to help support their programs, then those could be included here as well. The next one is the number of new or expanded collaborations formed within Extension. So maybe your state has developed some multidiscipline teams to tackle something like health. You know, for a lot of the health programming, policy systems, and environment change is a key cornerstone of that. And that includes elements of not just teaching people healthy life skills, but it's also working with them, teaching community development techniques to help address the problem of health overall. And so any new collaborations, or maybe you've worked with some people on a specific project, but maybe now you've expanded that to try to tackle some new projects as well. And so those can be the types of things that you would include here. And then the last one is actually one, I think I lied to you earlier, Susan, because we have been collecting FTEs all along as well. I don't think we really have considered it an indicator, but it is an indicator. And so again, this is just trying to track how much our universities are investing in community development in terms of staff that are doing the work in our field. And I think different states probably approach this differently. I know some states are just counting dedicated people that their 100% of their job is to do community development programming. In my state, we do that. We count all of our state level people that's 100% of their job. But if we have agents that have a 25% community development appointment and they're reporting that they're actually doing work with that 25% of time, then I aggregate all of that up. So basically, how I've historically done it is taken all the hours that anybody in extension has reported to our community development program area and then divided by 2080 to get a number of FTEs. So there's really not a right or wrong way to do these things as long as you're being consistent in how you approach it and how you measure from year to year. Okay. So the next thing I'll just talk a little bit about is just some things to think about. I've been doing this stuff for a long, long time, and every institution is different in terms of how they're approaching gathering this information. There are some states that they only pull information related to programs at their state level team, right? So their state team, maybe they have a workforce person, maybe they have a broadband person, maybe they have a creative arts in the community program. So they're collecting this information only from those dedicated individuals that have those responsibilities. Other states have embedded this into their statewide reporting system. And so anybody working in extension potentially could do community development work, even if it wasn't necessarily assigned to them. So if they're reporting that they're doing that work, those states are pulling all that information through their statewide measurement system and reporting that information. I think the key for you is to be confident that the numbers that you're reporting are accurate or that you're doing it in good faith. I'm a state where we have it in our big data system, but I review that data. And if there are numbers that jump out to me that seem obviously wrong, then I'm going to go to the person that reported that and see if that really was legitimate, or maybe that was a mistake. Maybe they typed something in wrong. Maybe they misunderstood what that indicator was. So I think bottom line, it's report what you feel that you can defend if anyone were to question the numbers that you submitted. Another kind of important thing to think about is who are the data keepers. So I think Roseanne maybe mentioned this a little bit earlier. If there are people that are already collecting this data in your system, no need to reinvent the wheel or collect it again. Go to the people that are collecting that information and get it from them, and then be done with it. So just kind of think about that. I think another way to think about it is in terms of, you may have a dedicated community development team or department, but again, if another department is doing community development work, make sure that you're also capturing that impact from them as well and reporting that as part of your indicators. And then a final consideration when you're thinking about data collection is training the people. So again, this goes back to what I just said about being defensive, having data that's defensible. So making sure that if you are collecting data from whoever you're collecting it from, that you've trained them on, these are the ways that we are collecting it for our institution. Maybe you're giving them sample evaluation surveys to use with their programming. Maybe you have actually a logic model which has strategies laid out for program evaluation. So make sure that people have the tools that you need them to use to collect the information, and that they're trained to do it so that they're reporting what is accurate. And then again, take that extra step of screening the data if you need to, and cleaning it if there's something that is suspect.
Thanks, Stacy. So let's talk a little bit about vignette best practices. So what makes a really strong impact statement? So what we're looking for is 75 words or less that you can clearly and specifically communicate what was the issue. So you clearly state that problem. What was the response to that issue? So what action did your state take? And then a little bit about the results achieved. So demonstrate that difference, that impact that you had by addressing the issue and how you addressed it. So you want to be specific, you want to be quantifiable, and you want to be able to demonstrate the difference made because extension was there. So let's go over a couple of examples, and some of these you might recognize because some of the authors are actually on this call right now. So here's one that is a pretty good example of 75 words of an overall program. So after having successful outcomes during their pilot year, the Community and Economic Development Unit of the Cooperative Extension Program received $130,000 from the USDA Office of the Secretary to train entrepreneurs interested in starting a business in energy auditing and home weatherization. As a result, 18 of the 20 participants were Building Performance Institute certified, 8 received internships, 8 started a business, 2 started nonprofit organizations, and 8 received contract offers. The estimated economic impact is $1.8 million. This one is a pretty strong one. The only thing that I think, in my opinion, I would go back to the original author of this and state, can you more clearly define the issue? We talk about the Community Economic Development Unit, but what specifically were they put in action for? What was the issue? They don't really clearly define that as much as they possibly could. And it's a little tiny wordy here with the Community Economic Development Unit of the Cooperative Extension Program. You know, we can use acronyms. Most of us will understand them, so it's okay to abbreviate a bit like that. But this one overall, a pretty good one. Again, 75 words. The next one that I'm going to share is an amazing, this one hits the nail on the head. This is a perfect, strong program highlight. So nearly 18% of Virginians live in a food desert. We know the problem. With partnership, they implemented programs to increase healthy food access. And one of their approaches was the new River Valley prescription for produce model. They go into a bit about that. So we know what the problem was. We know what the solution that they implemented. And as a result, the recipients helped in the garden, and over 830 pounds of produce were harvested in the Petersburg City, 7 community and inner city school gardeners were started. This is the most ideal one for it as an example. Clearly states what the issue was, clearly states what the solution that extension implemented was, and then clearly states what was the end result and impacts that it had because this program was there. So this is a really good example. Again, it's 75 words. So I know that's kind of like a catch for a lot of folks. When you submit them to me, I do review them. And if they are way beyond 75 words, I will email you back and say, could you please narrow this down? Because I don't want to take the words out of your mouth and misinterpret the meaning that you intended. So I don't feel overly comfortable doing major edits if it's way beyond the 75 words. So I'll kind of put it back into your corner. But if it's a few words over and I can kind of wordsmith it a little bit, I will, and then I'll send it back to you for final approval. But if you can really just send me a good solid one with the 75 words, then I know that there's no room of misinterpreting or misconstruing the story that you want to share with your constituents.
All right, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about more resources available to help you with either these indicators directly or reporting in general. So the first link I'm going to drop in the chat actually right here so you can follow it along. And this highlights, there's so much information on this page specifically just about the state's Community Development Committee and the Southern Region Program Leaders Network. Many of you are a part of that. Some of you may be joining us this year for the first time. So you'll be learning more about that process and how we work together regionally to discuss and identify issues. This revamp of indicators came out of a conversation at one of the PLN meetings related to that and just how we could collect information more collectively. The ideas for having these trainings also came out of that. So if you follow that link, you're going to see everything you never wanted to know about PLN. Just a deep dive on any information that you might have or any questions you might have. But there's also some really good resources there on some templates and some instructions and just ways to understand more of what's happened in the past or logic model resources. So especially for those of you that are maybe jumping in or you've kind of been in this network for only 1 or 2 years, this is a great way to see what's been done in the past and to understand the information. And then the other one I want to highlight is the past reports. And I will say, when I took over reporting for our organization, just maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I learned a lot just from reading these past reports. It gave me so much information on understanding what was being discussed and what was being requested and how things have been communicated in the past to help me understand how I could best align our own institution to figure out how we could move forward. And just reviewing these helped me, I think, make tweaks just, I'll say, over the past 2 years to even refine how we do it at University of Kentucky to strengthen our own communication at our state level based on some of these. So I highly recommend visiting those links and reviewing those. Again, there's information from, it goes pretty far back, which is really helpful to just get an overview, but at least read the past 2 or 3 years because I think that'll be the best springboard to help you. Or if you're kind of stuck on an idea, these are great to go to get more ideas of what kind of things can be reported that would be valuable. Also, you have all of our contact info there. We are going to send some follow-up resources after this with the slides, and you'll have our contact info there. You're always welcome to reach out to us to ask questions or brainstorm if you want more information moving forward, or you just have specific questions about whether an indicator would really work best for you or not. Next slide. So we would love a little bit of feedback on today's training if you scan that QR code, or I'm going to drop the link in the chat. But what we thought might be really helpful for everyone is let's go ahead and do a general Q&A about anything we've talked about so far. You can feel free to unmute and ask or type it in the chat to ask questions about what we've discussed so far. And then please provide some feedback. And then we thought we would stay on afterwards. We could stop recording after the initial Q&A and then just stay on for some open office hours for anyone that wants to stick around and ask more questions or do more of a deep dive on the information. So let's start with just opening up the floor for questions. Is there anyone that has questions about what we've covered so far?
Or if anybody wants to share strategies that you're using in your own institution. I know several of you have been doing this for a while, but then some of you are newer to this process. And so we learn best by learning from each other.
I'll go ahead and say something that helped us was really hearing the conversation that we don't have to report on every single indicator. Just because it's sent out in the list does not mean you feel like at your state you have to check every box to prove that you're doing efforts on all these things. It has been really effective to just select a focused set and say, okay, we're going to just make a really concentrated effort at these and collecting really quality data about these specific indicators. I know that's streamlined our process and really increased our confidence in our reporting as well.
Hey, you guys. This is Crystal Allen. So I just wanted to reach in so I have a good bit of my team on from Southern University, and I asked them to join because as a unit, we do a phenomenal job with our programming. We do a phenomenal job with our surveys and measuring impacts. But when it comes to indicators, we are lacking with tracking that information. In addition, we do a fabulous job with collaborating throughout our institution. So I know Southern is a bit different from how other extension programs and departments are ran, or even their structure, just in terms, our Ag Center is an entirely separate campus from our university, but we do a lot of collaborations with our university. So hearing today that we can look at the work that we're doing collaboratively, even if we are not the main player, but our efforts contributed to that impact, to that indicator or that change, is great. It's just a matter of us figuring out, or us fine tuning, because it's not figuring out. We're well on our way, but it's just fine tuning how we are tracking these things when we are not the major person. So we would not have access, or we would not readily have access to that information. Whereas if it was our own program. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as it is extension programming and it falls within the definition of community development, I think that's exactly what you want to do, because we want to capture the breadth of community development work that's happening in our land grant institutions. So I think that's perfect, if I understood that correctly.
Yeah, just making sure we're on the right track. So I think thank you for the reassurance.
Yeah. Now I will say this, there is turfism that exists within our universities. We all know that. So if they're not comfortable with you reporting their data as community development indicators, then I think you do need to have that conversation. But as long as you've had that conversation and they're comfortable doing that, and even if they're not initially, just having that discussion of, we're not claiming ownership of everything that's in here as an individual department or segment of our institution. We're claiming ownership of the extension work that's happening within this realm. And as long as they get shared credit in that, I don't see why that would be problematic. And in fact, you could even highlight that in your vignette if you wanted to, help make the case for that you're not taking credit for the work that's being done by somebody else, but it's institution level work, not necessarily at the department level.
Stacey, you just hit the nail on the head with what I was trying to, I guess, avoid saying. I think it comes down to taking credit and people wanting to feel acknowledged for their input as well, or feeling like, hey, I see you got a comment in the chat, so I'm not going to take up too much time. So I do like the suggestion of letting them know, hey, we can highlight that it was a collaboration, or who was the lead on it. And maybe that could kind of ease those blurred lines. Thank you again, Stacey. And this was phenomenal. Thank you guys for hosting.
Do we have any other questions that you'd like to either unmute or drop in the chat? Co-presenters, do we have anything else we'd like to highlight before we send everyone on their way?
I mean, one thing I will say, or just share, these are indicators. They're not all outcome indicators. Some of them are outputs. Some of the outcomes are shorter term versus medium or longer term. And that's intentional because as you guys know, a lot of the work that we do is often hard to measure, or it takes a long time to get to those outcomes that you're hoping for. So by having kind of a mix of those things, it allows you to showcase your work and demonstrate that effort is happening as well as outcomes happening. So if that kind of struck anybody as odd, that is something when the group got together, the national group got together and debated these in depth, that was something that happened. And then I'll also just go ahead and say that there were a few other indicators. If you were at our meeting in August, there were some other indicators on that list that were removed subsequently, just given current guidance from the federal government, from many of our state governments. So we took out some of those indicators that might be construed as a little more controversial. Doesn't mean that your institution can't collect that data. And the other thing is, this is not everything necessarily that you would want to collect. This is just stuff that we felt like could be aggregated across the region to tell the story of our system as a region. But certainly, if there are other indicators that are more relevant to your programs that help you show and demonstrate the impact of your work, you would want to collect those and keep those for state level reports. And then another thing I would just say, I'm sorry, I just like to talk apparently, but when you look at our reports that we have at a regional level, I would encourage you to take that and you develop a variation that is for your state specifically and share that with your administration, share that with your stakeholders, share that with your legislators and congressional delegations or your Office of Government Relations or Stakeholder Relations, because the work that we do is often overlooked and undervalued. And so anything that you can do to make that case is going to help you in the long run justify the work that you're doing and show why you're an important part of the extension program.
And I would throw in, Stacy, before we go, um, turning in indicators. If you choose not to turn in indicators, you don't feel like you can, don't forget to do the vignette. You can do the vignette without doing the indicators and vice versa. If you don't feel like you've got a good vignette, don't don't feel like you can't turn in indicators. So they're not contingent upon one another, because I know there have been years that we at West Virginia State have turned in a vignette but not necessarily turned in indicator numbers. So you definitely want to be represented in some capacity.
So what we thought we'd do next is thank you all so much for joining us. We really appreciate you taking time to join us and learn about these indicators. We will send out the recording and the slides to have those available for you.